Fit 3. Stanza 46. In the faint light before dawn folk were stirring, guests who had to go gave orders to the grooms, who busied themselves briskly with the beasts, saddling, trimming the tackle and tying on their luggage. Arrayed for riding in the richest style, guests leaped on their mounts lightly, laid hold of the bridles, and each rider rode out on his own chosen way. The beloved lord of the land was not the last up, being arrayed for riding with his retinue in force. He ate a sop hastily when he had heard mass, and hurried with horn to the hunting field, before the sun's first rays fell on the earth. On their high steeds were he and his knights. Then these cunning hunters came to couple their hounds, cast open the kennel doors and called them out, and blew on the bugles 3 bold notes. The hounds broke out barking, baying fiercely, and when they went chasing they were whipped back. There were 100 choice huntsmen there whose fame resounds. To the station's keepers strode huntsmen, unleashed hounds, the Everest overflowed with the strident bugle sounds. Stanza 47. At the first cry wild creatures quivered with dread. The deer in distraction darted down to the dales or up to the high ground, but eagerly they were driven back by the beaters, who bellowed lustily. They let the harts with high-branching heads have their freedom, and the brave bucks, too, with the broad antlers, for the noble prince had expressly prohibited meddling with male deer in the months of close season. But the hinds were held back with a hay and a worm, and as driven with much din to the deep valleys. Lo! The arrows slanting flight as they were loosed. A shaft flew forth at every forest turning, the broad head biting on the brown bank. They screamed as the blood streamed out, sank dead on the sward, always harried by hounds hard on their heels, and the hurrying hunters' high home notes. Like the rending of ramped hills roared the din. If one of the wild beasts slipped away from the archers, it was dragged down and met death at the dog bases after being hunted from the high ground and harried to the water, so skilled were the hunt servants at stations lower down, so gigantic the greyhounds that grabbed them in a bash, seizing them savagely, as swift, I swear, as sight. The lord, in humour high, would spur, then stop and alight. In bliss the day went by till dark drew on and night. Stanza 48. Thus by the forest borders the brave lord sported, and the good man Gawain, on his gay bed lying, lay hidden till the light of day gleamed on the walls, covered with fair canopy, the curtains closed, and as in slumber he slept on, there slipped into his mind a slight, suspicious sound, and the door stealthily opened. He raised up his head out of the bedclothes, caught up the cover of the curtain a little, and watched warily towards it to see what it was. It was the lady, loveliest to look upon, who secretly and silently secured the door, then bore towards his bed. The brave knight, embarrassed, lay flat with fine adroitness and feigned sleep. Silently she stepped on, stole to his bed, caught up the curtain, crept within, and seated herself softly on the side of the bed. There she watched a long while, waiting for him to wake. Slyly close this long while lay the knight, considering in his soul this circumstance, its sense and likely sequel, for it seemed marvellous. Still, it would be more circumspect, he said to himself, to speak and discover her desire in due course. So he stirred and stretched himself, twisting towards her, opened his eyes and acted as if astounded, and, to seem the safer by such service, crossed himself in dread. With chin and cheeks fair, white ranged with rosy red, with laughing lips, and air of love, she lightly said. Stanza 49. Good morning, Sir Gawain, the gay one murmured. How unsafely you sleep, that one may slip in here. Now you are taken in a trice. Unless a truce come between us, I shall bind you to your bed, of that be sure. The lady uttered laughingly those playful words. Good morning, gay lady, Gawain blithely greeted her. Do with me as you will, that well pleases me. For I surrender speedily, and sue for our grace, which, to my mind, since I must, is much the best course. And thus he repaid her with repartee and ready laughter. Beautiful, lovely lady, your leave were forth coming, and you were pleased to free your prisoner and pray him to rise. I would abandon my bed for a better habiliment and have more happiness in our honey talk. Nay, verily, fine sir, urged the voice of that sweet one, you shall not budge far on your bed. I have a better idea. I shall hold you a street here on this other side as well, and so chat on with the chevalier my chains have caught. For I know well, my knight, that your name is Sir Gawain, whom all the world worships, wherever he ride, for lords and their ladies, and all living folk hold your honour in high esteem, and your courtesy. And now here you are truly, and we are utterly alone. My lord and his liege men are a long way off, others still bide in the beds. My bower maidens too, shut fast and firmly with a fine hasp is the door, and since I have in this house him who pleases all, as long as my time lasts I shall lingering in talk take my fill. My young body is yours, do with it what you will, my strong necessities force me to be your servant still. Single quote. Stanza 50. In good truth, said Gawain, that is again indeed. Though I am hardly the hero of whom you speak, to be held in such honour as you here suggest, I am altogether unworthy, I own it freely. By God, I should be glad if you granted it right for me to essay by speech or some other service to pleasure such a perfect lady. Pure joy it would be. In good truth, Sir Gawain, the gay lady replied, I fell slighted or set at naught your spotless fame and your all-pleasing prowess, it would show poor breeding. But there is no lack of ladies who would love, noble one, to hold you in their arms, as I have you here, and linger in the luxury of your delightful discourse, which would perfectly pleasure them and appease their woes, rather than have riches or the red gold they own. But as I love that Lord, the celestial ruler, I have wholly in my hand what all desire through his grace. Not loath was she to allure this lady fire of face, but the knight with speeches pure answered in each case. Stanza 51. Madam, said the merry man, may Mary requite you. For in good faith I have found in you free-hearted generosity. Certain men for the deeds receive esteem from others, but for myself I do not deserve the respect they show me. Your honourable mind makes you utter only what is good. Now by Mary, said the noble lady, not so it seems to me, for were I worth the whole of womankind, and all the wealth in the world were in my hand, and if bargaining I were to bid to bring myself a lord with your noble qualities, knight, made known to me now your good looks, gracious manner and great courtesy, all of which I have heard of before, but here prove true, no lord that is living could be allowed to excel you. Indeed, dear lady, you did better, said the knight, but I am proud of the precious price you put on me, and solemnly as your servant say you are my sovereign. May Christ requite you, I have become your knight. Then of many matters they talked till mid-morning and after, and all the time she behaved as if she adored him, but Sir Gawain was on guard in a gracious manner. Then of many matters they talked till mid-morning and after, and all the time she behaved as if she adored him, but Sir Gawain was on guard in a gracious manner. Though she was the winsomest woman the warrior had known, he was less love-laden because of the loss he must now face. His destruction by the stroke, for come it must, was the case. The lady of leaving then spoke, he assented with speedy grace. Stanza 52. Then she gave him goodbye, glinting with laughter, and standing up, astounded him with these strong words, may he who prospers every speech for this pleasure reward you. I cannot bring myself to believe that you could be Gawain. How so? Said the knight, speaking urgently, for he feared he had failed to observe the forms of courtesy. But the beauteous one blessed him and brought out this argument, such a great man as Gawain is granted to be, the very vessel of virtue and fine courtesy, could scarcely have stayed such a sojourn with a lady without craving a kiss out of courtesy, touched by some trifling hint at the tail end of a speech. So be it, as you say, then said Gawain, I shall kiss at your command, as becomes a knight who fears to offend you, no further plea is needed. whereupon she approached him and pent him in her arms, leaned over him lovingly and gave the Lord a kiss. Then they commended each other to Christ in comely style, and without more words she went out by the door. He made ready to rise with rapid haste, summoned his servant, selected his garb, and walked down, when he was dressed, early to mass. Then he went to the well-served meal which awaited him, and made merry sport till the moon rose at night. Never was Baron Bold so taken by lady's bride, that young one and the old, they throve all three in delight. Stanza 53. And still at his sport spurred the castellan, hunting the barren hinds in hold and on heath. So many had he slain, by the setting of the sun, of does and other deer, that it was downright wonderful. Then at the finish the folk flocked in eagerly, and quickly collected the killed deer in a heap. Those highest in rank came up with hosts of attendants, picked out what appeared to be the plumpest beasts, and, according to custom, had them cut open with finesse. Some who ceremoniously assessed them there found 2 fingers' breadth of fat on the worst. Then they slit open the slot, seized the first stomach, scraped it with a keen knife, and tied up the tripes. Next they hacked off all the legs, the hide was stripped, the belly broken open, and the bowels removed carefully, lest they loosen the ligature of the knot. Then they gripped the gullet, disengaged deftly the weasant from the windpipe, and whipped out the guts. Then their sharp knives shore through the shoulder bones, which they slid out of a small hole, leaving the sides intact. Then they cleft the chest clean through, cutting it in 2. Then again at the gullet a man began to work, and straightway rived it right to the fork, flicked out the shoulder fillets, and faithfully then he rapidly ripped free the rib fillets. Similarly, as is seemly, the spine was cleared all the way to the haunch which hung from it, and they heaved up the whole haunch and hewed it off, and that is called, according to its kind, the numbles, I find. At the thigh forks then they strain and free the folds behind, hurrying to hack all in twain, the backbone to unbind. Stanza 54. Then they hewed off the head and also the neck, and after sundered the sides swiftly from the chine, and into the foliage they flung the fay of the raven. Then each fellow, for his fee, as it fell to him to have, skewered through the stout flanks beside the ribs, and then by the hocks of the haunches they hung up the booty. On one of the finest fayelles they fayed their hounds, and let 'em have the lights, the liver, and the tripes, with bread well imbrued with blood mixed with them. Boldly they blew the kill amid the baying of hounds. Then off they went homewards, holding their meat, stalwartly sounding many stout tom calls. As dark was descending, they were drawing near to the comely castle, where quietly our knight stayed. Fires roared, and blithely hearts were beating, as into hall came the lord. When Gawain gave him greeting, joy abounded at the board. Stanza 55. Then the ousty commune ordered everyone to meet in the hall, called the ladies to come down with the company of maidens. Before all the folk on the floor he bid men fetch the venison and place it before him. Then gaily and in good humour to Gawain he called, told over the tally of the sturdy beasts, and showed him the fine fat flesh flayed from the ribs. How does the sport please you? Do you praise me for it? Am I thoroughly thanked for thriving as a huntsman? Certainly, said the other, such splendid spoils have I not seen for 7 years in the season of winter. And I give you all, Gawain, said the good man then, for according to our covenant you may claim it as your own. Sirs, that is so, and I say the same to you, said Gawain, for my true gains in this great house I am not loath to allow must belong to you. And he put his arms round his handsome neck, hugging him, and kissed him in the comeliest way he could think of. Accept my takings, sir, for I received no more gladly would I grant 'em, however great they were. And therefore why thank you, the thane said, good. Yours may be the better gift, if you would break it to me where your wisdom won you wealth of that kind. No such clause in our contract. Request nothing else. Said the other, you have your due, ask more, none should. They laughed in blithe assent with worthy words and good. Then to supper they swiftly went, to fresh delicious food. Stanza 56. And sitting afterwards by the hearth of an audience chamber, where retainers repeatedly brought them rare wines, in the jolly jesting they jointly agreed on a settlement similar to the preceding one, to exchange the chance achievements of the morrow, no matter how novel they were. At night when they met, they accorded on this compact, the whole court observing, and the bumper was brought forth in banter to seal it. And at last they lovingly took leave of each other, each man hastening thereafter to his bed. The cock having crowed and called only thrice, the lord leaped from bed, and his liege men too, so that mass and a meal were meetly dealt with, and by first light the foe LK to the forest were bound for the chase. Proudly the hunt with horns soon drove through a desert place, uncoupled through the thorns the great hounds pressed apace. Stanza 57. By a quagmire they quickly scented quarry and gave tongue, and the chief huntsman urged on the first hounds up, spurring him on with a splendid spate of words. The hounds, hearing it, hurried there at once, fell on the trial furiously, 40 together, and made such echoing uproar, all howling at once, that the rocky banks round about rang with the din. Hunters inspirited 'em with sound of speech and hum. Then together in a group across the ground they surged at speed between a pool and a spiteful crag. On a stony knoll by a steep cliff at the side of a bog, where rugged rocks had roughly tumbled down, they careered on the quest, the cry following, then surrounded the crag and the rocky knoll as well, certain their prey skulked inside their ring. For the baying of the bloodhounds meant the beast was there. Then they beat upon the bushes and bade him come out, and he swung out savagely aslant the line of men, a baneful boar of unbelievable size, a solitary long since sundered from the herd, being old and brawny, the biggest of 'em all. And grim and ghastly when he grunted, great was the grief when he thrust through the hounds, hurling 3 to earth, and sped on scot-free, swift and unscathed. They hallooed, yelled, "Look out!" cried, "Hey, we have him!" and blew horns boldly, to bring the bloodhounds together. Many were the merry cries from men and dogs as they hurried clamouring after the quarry to kill him on the track. Many times he turns at bay and tears the dogs which attack. He herds the hounds, and they moan in a piteous pack. Stanza 58. Then men shoved forward, shaped to shoot at him. Loosed arrows at him, hitting him often, but the points, for all the power, could not pierce his flanks. Nor would the barbs bite on his bristling brow. Though the smooth-shaven shaft shattered in pieces, wherever it hit the head rebounded. But when the boar was battered by blows unceasing, goaded and driven demented, he dashed at the men, striking them savagely as he assailed them in rushes, so that some lacking stomach stood back in fear. But the lord on a lithe horse lunged after him, blew on his bugle like a bold knight in battle, rallied the hounds as he rode through the rank thickets, pursuing this savage boar till the sun set. But the lord on a lithe horse lunged after him, blew on his bugle like a bold knight in battle, rallied the hounds as he rode through the rank thickets, pursuing this savage boar till the sun set. And so they disported themselves this day while our lovable lord lay in his bed. At home the gracious Gawain in gorgeous clothes reclined. The gay one did not forget to come with welcome kind, and early him beset to make him change his mind. Stanza 59. She carney to the curtain and cast her eye on Sir Gawain, who at once gave her gracious welcome, and she answered him eagerly, with ardent words, Saturday at his side softly, and with a spurt of laughter and a loving look delivered these words, It seems to me strange, if, sir, you were Gawain. A person so powerfully disposed to good, yet nevertheless know nothing of noble conventions, and, when made aware of them, wave them away quickly. You have cast off what I schooled you in yesterday by the truest of all tokens of talk I know, O pound what? Said the wondering knight, I am not aware of one. But if it be true what you tell, I am entirely to blame. I counselled you then about kissing, the comely one said, when a favour is conferred, it must be forthwith accepted, that is becoming for a courtly knight who keeps the rules. Sweet one, unsay that speech, said the brave man, for I dared not do that lest I be denied. If I were forward and were refused, the fault would be mine. But none, said the noblewoman, could deny you, by my faith. You are strong enough to constrain with your strength if you wish, if any was ill-bred as to offer you resistance. Yes, good guidance you give me, by God, replied Gawain, but threateners are ill thought of and do not thrive in my country, nor do gifts thrive when given without goodwill. I am here at your behest to offer a kiss to when you like. You may do it whenever you deem fit, or desist in this place. The beautiful lady bent and fairly kissed his face. Much speech the two then spent on love, its grief and grace. Stanza 6. I would know of you, knight, the noble lady said, if it did not anger you, what argument you use, being so hale and hearty as you are at this time, so generous a gentleman as you are justly famed to be, since the choicest thing in chivalry, the chief thing praised, is the laurel sport of love, the very law of arms. For the tale of the contentions of true knights is told by the title and text of their feats, how lords for the true loves put their lives at hazard, endured dreadful trials for the dear love's sakes, and with valor avenged and made void their woes, bringing home abundant bliss by the virtues. You are the gentlest and most just of your generation, everywhere your honor and high fame are known, yet I have Saturday at your side 2 separate times here without hearing you utter in any way a single syllable of the saga of love. Being so polished and punctilious a pledge fulfiller, you ought to be eager to lay open to a young thing your discoveries in the craft of courtly love. What? Are you ignorant, with all your renown? Or do you deem me too dull to drink in your dalliance? For shame. I sit here unchaperoned, and stay to acquire some courtly game, so while my lord is away, teach me your true wit's fame. Single quote. Stanza 61. In good faith, said Gawain, may God requite you. It gives me great happiness, and is good sport to me, that so fine a fair one as you should find her way here, and take pains with so poor a man, make pastime with her knight, with any kind of clemency, it comforts me greatly. But foe are me to take on the travail of interpreting true love and construing the subjects of the stories of arms to you who, I hold, have more skill in that art by half than 100 of such as I am or ever shall be on the earth I inhabit would in faith be a manifold folly, noble lady. To please you I would press with all the power in my soul, for I am highly beholden to you, and evermore shall be true servant to your bounteous self, so save me God. So that state the lady tempted him and tried him with questions to win him to wickedness, whatever else she thought. But he defended himself so firmly that no fault appeared, nor was there any evil apparent on either side, but bliss. For long they laughed and played till she gave him a gracious kiss. A foe indeed farewell she bade, and went her way on this. Stanza 62. Sir Gawain bestirred himself and went to mass, then dinner was dressed and with due honour served. All day long the lord and the ladies disported, but the castellan coursed across the country time and again, hunted his hapless boar as it hurtled over the hills, then bit the backs of his best hounds asunder, standing at bay, till the bowman obliged him to break free out into the open, for all he could do, so fast the arrows flew when the folk there concentrated. Even the strongest he sometimes made start back, but in time he became so tired he could tear away no more, and with the speed he still possessed he spurred to a hole on a rise by a rock with a running stream beside. He got the bank at his back, and began to abrade the ground. The froth was foaming foully at his mouth, and he whetted his white tusks. A weary time it was for the bold men about, who were bound to harass him from a distance, for none dared to draw near him for dread. He had hurt so many men that it entered no one's head to be torn by his tusks again, and he raging and seeing red. Stanza 63. Till the castellan came himself, encouraging his horse, and saw the boar at bay with his band of men around. He alighted in lively fashion, left his courser, drew and brandished his broadsword, and boldly strode forward, striding at speed through the stream to where the savage beast was. The wild thing was aware of the weapon and its wielder, and so bridled with its bristles in a bunt of fierce snorts that all were anxious for the lord, lest he have the worst of it. Straightway the savage brood sprang at the man, and Baron and boar were both in a heap in the swelling water. The worst went to the beast, for the man had marked him well at the moment of impact, had put a point precisely at the pit of his chest, and drove it into the hilt, so that the heart was shattered, and the spent beast sank snarling and was swept downstream, teeth bare. 100 hounds and more attack and seize and tear, men tug him to the shore, and the dogs destroy him there. Stanza 64. Bugles blew the triumph, horns blared loud. There was hallooing in high pride by all present, brakes bayed at the beast, as bidden by the masters, the chief huntsmen in charge of that chase so hard. Then one who was wise in woodcraft started in style to slash open the boar. First he hewed off the head and hoisted it on high, then rent him roughly along the ridge of his back, brought out the bowels and broiled them on coals for blending with bread as the break's reward. Then he broke out the brawn from the bright broad banks, took out the offal as is fit, attached the two halves entirely together, and on a strong stake stoutly hung 'em. Then home they hurried with the huge beast with the boar's head borne before the Baron himself, who had destroyed him in the stream by the strength of his arm. Above all, it seemed to him an age till he greeted Gawain in hall to reap his rightful wage. The latter came at his call. Stanza 65. The Lord exclaimed loudly, laughing merrily when he saw Sir Gawain, and spoke joyously. The sweet ladies were sent for, and the servants assembled. Then he showed him the shields, and surely described the large size and length, and the malignity of the fierce boars fighting when he fled in the woods, so that Gawain congratulated him on his great deed. Commended it as a merit he had manifested well, for a beast with so much brawn, the bold man said, a boar of such breadth he had not before seen. When they handled the huge head, the upright man praised it, expressed horror thereat for the ear of the Lord. Now Gawain, said the good man, this game is your own by our contracted treaty, in truth, you know. It is so, said the knight, and as certainly I shall give you all my gains as guerdon, in faith. He clasped the castellan's neck and kissed him kindly, and then served him a second time in the same style. In all our transactions since I came to sojourn, asserted Gawain, up to tonight, as of now, there's nothing that low. By St. Giles, the castellan quipped, you're the finest fale LOW I know, your wealth will have us whipped if your trade continues so. By St. Giles, the castellan quipped, you're the finest fale LOW I know, your wealth will have us whipped if your trade continues so. Single quote. Stanza 66. Then the trestles and tables were trimly set out, complete with cloths, and clearly flaming cressets and waxen torches were placed in the wall brackets by retainers, who then tended the entire hall gathering. Much gladness and glee then gushed forth there by the fire on the floor, and in multifarious ways they sang noble songs at supper and afterwards, a concert of Christmas carols and new dance songs, with the most mannerly mirth a man could tell of. And our courteous knight kept constant company with the lady. In a bewitchingly well-mannered way she made up to him, secretly soliciting the stalwart knight so that he was astounded and upset in himself. But his upbringing forbade him to rebuff her utterly, so he behaved towards her honorably, whatever aspersions might be cast. They revelled in the hall as long as the pleasure might last, and then at the castellan's call to the chamber hearth they passed. Stanza 67. There they drank and discoursed and decided to enjoy similar solace and sport on New Year's Eve. But the princely knight asked permission to depart in the morning, for his appointed time was approaching, and perforce he must go. But the Lord would not let him, and implored him to linger, saying, I swear to you, as a staunch true knight, you shall gain the Green Chapel to give your dues, my lord, in the light of New Year, long before sunrise. Therefore remain in your room and rest in comfort, while I fare hunting in the forest, in fulfillment of our oath, exchanging what we achieve when the chase is over. For twice I have tested you, and twice found you true. Now, third time, throw best. Think of that tomorrow. Let us make merry while we may, set our minds on joy, the hard fate can hit man whenever it likes. This was graciously granted, and Gawain stayed. Blithely drink was brought, then to bed with lights they pressed. All night Sir Gawain sleeps softly and still at rest, but the Lord his custom keeps and is early up and dressed. Stanza 68. After Mass, he and his men made a small meal. Merry was the morning, he demanded his horse. The men were ready mounted before the main gate, a host of knightly horsemen to follow after him. Wonderfully fair was the forest land, for the frost remained, and the rising sun shone ruddily on the ragged clouds, in its beauty brushing the blackness off the heavens. The huntsmen unleashed the hounds by a hillside, and the rocks and surrounding bushes rang with their home calls. Some found and followed the fox's tracks, and were various ways in their wily fashion. A small hound cried the scent, the senior huntsman called his fellow foxhounds to him, and feverishly sniffing, the rout of dogs rushed forward on the right path. The fox hurried fast, for they found him soon, and seeing him distinctly pursued him at speed, unmistakably giving tongue with tumultuous din. Deviously in difficult country he doubled on his tracks, swerved and wheeled away, often waited listening, till at last by a little ditch he leaped a quickset hedge, and stole out stealthily at the side of a valley, considering his stratagem had given the slip to the hounds. But he stumbled on a tracking dog's tryst place unawares, and there in a cleft 3 hounds threatened him at once, all grey. He swiftly started back, and, full of deep dismay, he dashed on a different track. To the woods he went away. Stanza 69. Stanza 69. Then came the lively delight of listening to hounds when they had all met in a muster, mingling together. Before catching sight of him, they cried such curses on him that the clustering cliffs seemed to be crashing down. Here he was hallooed when the hunters met him. They savagely snarled at by intercepting hounds. Then he was called thief and threatened often as. With the tracking dogs on his tail, no tarrying was possible. When out in the open he was often run at, so he often swerved in again, that artful Rainit. Yes, he led the lord and his liege men a dance in this manner among the mountains till mid-afternoon, while harmoniously at home the honoured knight slept between the comely curtains in the cold morning. But the ladies longing to woo would not let her sleep, nor would she impair the purpose pitched in her heart, but rose up rapidly and ran to him in a ravishing robe that reached to the ground, trimmed with finest fur on pure pelts, not coiffed as to custom, but with costly jewels strung in scores on her splendid hairnet. Her fine-featured face and fair throat were unveiled, her breast was bare and her back as well. She came in by the chamber door and closed it after her, cast open a casement and called on the knight, and briskly thus rebuked him with bountiful words of good cheer. "Ah, sir, what sound asleep? The morning's crisp and clear." He had been drowsing deep, but now he had a hear. Stanza 71. The noble sighed ceaselessly in unsettled slumber as threatening thoughts thronged in the dawnlight about destiny, which the day after would deal him his fate at the green chapel where Gawain was to greet his man and be bound to bear his buffet unresisting. But having recovered consciousness in comely fashion, he heaved himself out of dreams and answered hurriedly. The lovely lady advanced, laughing adorably, swooped over his splendid face and sweetly kissed him. He welcomed her worthily with noble cheer, and gazing on her gay and glorious attire, her features so faultless and fine of complexion, he felt a bush of rapture suffuse his heart. Sweet and genial smiling slid him into joy till bliss burst forth between them. NLLNG gay and bright, with joy the two contended in talk of true delight, and peril would have impended had Mary not minded her knight. Stanza 71. For that peerless princess pressed him so hotly, so invited him to the very verge, that he felt forced either to allow her love or blackguardly rebuff her. For that peerless princess pressed him so hotly, so invited him to the very verge, that he felt forced either to allow her love or blackguardly rebuff her. He was concerned for his courtesy, lest he be called caitiff, but more especially for his evil plight if he should plunge into sin, and dishonor the owner of the house treacherously. God shield me. That shall not happen, for sure, said the knight. So with laughing love talk he deflected gently the downright declarations that dropped from her lips. Said the beauty to the bold man, blame will be yours if you love not the living body lying close to you more than all wooers in the world who are wounded in heart, unless you have a lover more beloved, who delights you more, a maiden to whom you are committed. So immutably bound that you do not seek to sever from her, which I see is so. Tell me the truth of it, I entreat you now, by all the loves there are, do not hide the truth with guile. Then gently, by St. John, said the knight with a smile, I owe my oath to none, nor wish to yet a while. Single quote. Stanza 72. Those words, said the fair woman, are the worst there could be, but I am truly answered to my utter anguish. Give me now a gracious kiss, and I shall go from here as a maid that loves much the morning on this earth. Then, sighing, she stooped, and seemingly kissed him, and, severing herself from him, stood up and said, at this adieu, my dear one, do me this pleasure, give me something as gift, your glove if no more, to mitigate my mourning when I remember you. Now certainly, for your sake, said the knight, I wish I had here the handsomest thing I own, for you have deserved, forsooth, superabundantly and rightfully, a richer reward than I could give. But as tokens of true love, trifles mean little. It is not to your honor to have at this time a mere glove as Gawain's gift a treasure. For I am here on an errand in unknown regions, and have no bondsmen, no baggages with dear bought things in them. This afflicts me now, fair lady, for your sake. Man must do as he must, neither lament it nor repine. No, highly honored one, replied that lady fine, though gift you give me none, you must have something of mine. Single quote. Stanza 73. She proffered him a rich ring wrought in red gold, with a sparkling stone set conspicuously in it, which beamed as brilliantly as the bright sun. You may well believe its worth was wonderfully great. But the courteous man declined it, and quickly said, before God, gracious lady, no giving just now. Not having anything to offer, I shall accept nothing. She offered it him urgently, and he refused again, fast affirming his refusal on his faith as a knight. Put out by this repulse, she presently said, if you reject my ring as too rich in value, doubtless you would be less deeply indebted to me if I gave you my girdle, a less gainful gift. She swiftly slipped off the cincture of her gown, which went round her waist under the wonderful mantle, a girdle of green silk with a golden hem, embroidered only at the edges, with hand-stitched ornament. And she pleaded with the prince in a pleasant manner to take it, notwithstanding its trifling worth, but he told her that he could touch no treasure at all, not gold nor any gift, till God gave him grace to pursue to success the search he was bound on. And therefore why beg you not to be displeased, press no more your purpose, for I promise it never can be. I owe you 100-fold for grace you have granted me, and ever through hot and cold I shall stay your devotee. Single quote. Stanza 74. Do you say no to this silk? Then said the beauty, because it is simple in itself. And so it seems. Lo, it is little indeed, and so less worth your esteem. But one who was aware of the worth twined in it would appraise its properties as more precious perhaps, for the man that binds his body with this belt of green, as long as he laps it closely about him, no hero under heaven can hack him to pieces, for he cannot be killed by any cunning on earth. Then the prince pondered, and it appeared to him a precious gem to protect him in the peril appointed him when he gained the green chapel to be given checkmate. It would be a splendid stratagem to escape being slain. Then he allowed her to solicit him and let her speak. She pressed the belt upon him with potent words, and having got his agreement, she gave it him gladly, beseeching him for her sake to conceal it always, and hide it from her husband with all diligence. That never should another know of it, the noble swore outright. Then often his thanks gave he with all his heart and might, and thrice by then had she kissed the constant knight. Stanza 75. Then with a word of farewell she went away, for she could not force further satisfaction from him. Directly she withdrew, Sir Gawain dressed himself, rose and arrayed himself in rich garments, but laid aside the lovelace the lady had given him. Secreted it carefully where he could discover it later. Then he went his way at once to the chapel, privily approached a priest and prayed him there to listen to his life's sins and enlighten him on how he might have salvation in the hereafter. Then, confessing his faults, he fairly shrove himself, begging mercy for both major and minor sins. He asked the holy man for absolution and was absolved with certainty and sent out so pure that doomsday could have been declared the day after. Then he made merrier among the noble ladies, with comely carolling and all kinds of pleasure than ever he had done, with ecstasy, till came dark night. Such honour he did to all, they said, never has this knight since coming into hall expressed such pure delight. Now long may he linger that love sheltering him. The prince was still on the plain, pleasuring in the chase, having finished off the fox he had followed so far. As he leaped over a hedge looking out for the quarry where he heard the hounds that were harrying the fox, Reynard came running through a rough thicket with the pack all pell-mell, panting at his heels. The lord, aware of the wild beast, waited craftily, then drew his dazzling sword and drove at the fox. The beast balked at the blade to break sideways, but a dog bounded at him before he could, and right in front of the horses they fell on him, all worrying their wily prey with a wild uproar. The lord quickly alighted and lifted him up, wrenched him beyond reach of the ravening fangs, held him high over his head and hallooed lustily, while the angry hounds in hordes bayed at him. Little hurried the huntsmen with horns in plenty, sounding the rally splendidly till they saw their lord. When the company of his court had come up to the kill, all who bore bugles blew at once, and the others without horns hallooed loudly. The requiem that was raised for our Reynard's soul, and the commotion made it the merriest meet ever, men said. The hounds must have the fee, they pat him on the head, then hold the foe and he is reft of his skin of red. Stanza 77. Then they set off for our home, it being almost night, blowing the big horns bravely as they went. At last the lord alighted at his beloved castle in fold upon the boar of fire, and beside it the good Sir Gawain in a glad humour by reason of the rich friendship he had reaped on the ladies. He wore a turquoise tunic extending to the ground, his softly furred surcoat suited him well, and his hood of the same hue hung from his shoulder. All trimmed with ermine were hood and surcoat. Meeting the master in the middle of the floor, Gawain went forward gladly and greeted him thus: forthwith, I shall be the first to fulfill the contract we settled so suitably without sparing the wine. Then he clasped the castellan and kissed him thrice as sweetly and steadily as a strong knight could. By Christ, quoth the other, you'll carve yourself a fortune by traffic in this trade when the terms suit you. Do not chop logic about the exchange, chipped in Gawain, as I have properly paid over the profit I made. Marry, said the other man, mine is inferior, for I have hunted all day and have only taken this ill-favoured fox's skin. May the fiend take it, and that is a poor price to pay for such precious things as you have pressed upon me here. 3 pure kisses so good. Enough, acknowledged Gawain. I thank you, by the rood. And how the fox was slain the Lord told him as they stood. Stanza 78. With mirth and minstrelsy, and meals when they liked. They made as merry then as ever men could, with the laughter of ladies and delightful jesting. Gawain and his good host were very gay together, save when excess or sottishness seemed likely. Master and men made many a witty sally, until presently, at the appointed parting time, the brave men were bidden to bed at last. Then of his host the hero humbly took leave, the first to bid farewell, fairly thanking him. May the high king requite you for your courtesy at this feast, and the wonderful week of my dwelling here. I would offer to be one of your own men if you liked. But that I must move on tomorrow, as you know, if you'll give me the guide you granted me to show me the green chapel where my share of doom will be dealt on New Year's Day, as God deems for me. With all my heart, said the host. In good faith. All that I ever promised you, I shall perform. He assigned him a servant to set him on his way and lead him in the hills without any delay, faring through forest and thicket by the most straightforward route they might. With every honour due, Gawain then thanked the knight, and having bid him adieu, took leave of the lady's bride. Stanza 79. So he spoke to them sadly, sorrowing as he kissed, and urged on 'em heartily his endless thanks, and they gave to Sir Gawain words of grace in return, commending him to Christ with cries of chill sadness. Then from the whole household he honourably took his leave, making all the men that he met amends from the several services and solicitous care, for they had been busy attendant bustling about him, and every soul was as sad to say farewell as if they had always had the hero in their house. Then the lords led him with lights to his chamber, and blithely brought him to bed to rest. If he slept, I dare not assert it less soundly than usual. There was much on his mind for the morrow, if he meant to give it thought. Let him lie there still, he almost has what he sought, so tarry a while until the process I report.